Carrie, welcome in.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to get a chance to talk with you here. Let's start at the very beginning. Born September 2nd, 1979. What can you tell me about your family?
I was a complete surprise.
Is that right?
Yes,
Why
they
were you
were
a
done.
surprise?
My middle sister Dana was a really hard child, and they were done. And
Hard in what way? Like the birth was hard, or she
no,
was difficult
just
behavioral?
difficult behavior
All right,
wise.
well,
Now she's turned it around. But
okay.
yeah, they were just done after 2, and so I was a big surprise, and obviously the best one out of the 3 of us.
Absolutely, I got the rankings. You are one.
Yeah. But yeah, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and loved that.
Yeah.
And my dad always worked a ton so he could provide for us. But it was always like that, the definite roles, regular
Sure.
roles of a family for sure. Grew up in a really small farming community, and we lived out in the country, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
So when you think of your family, what do you think of? What traits, what memories come to mind?
Yeah, so our whole family, even my extended family, are just super close. And I think what it taught me is that's number one important. You can't choose your family, but at the end of the day, no matter what, we're going to stick up and support. And my mom and dad always just created that atmosphere of support and kindness. And just overall love. And I think really the biggest thing is traditions. My parents were huge in traditions, and we're carrying that on with our boys. It's just that creation of memories of love and kindness, and that every detail matters. And I hope that that's what I'm bringing to my family now, too.
When you think of your mother's personality traits, what comes to mind right
Yeah,
away?
so we lost my mom, a little over 5 years ago to lung cancer. And we were, oddly enough, I was also sick with breast cancer at the time. And so my parents actually moved into our home in Dallas just to help. Our boys were 14 months old. And so, at the time I was like, oh, wow. My parents are moving into our house just to help, but it was such a blessing because we got to have her for the last few months of her life, 24/7. And I think even Kurt would attest just that she showed her love by caring on others. So there was always meals. They had a place at the Lake of the Ozarks. Like when you arrived, the bed was turned down and she had snacks for you. She might not say, I love you a ton, but that is how she showed, making sure everything was set up, everything was taken care of down to the, littlest detail. And at the time, I remember thinking, Mom, just don't worry about that. just be more present, be where your feet are at,
Yeah.
But looking back now, it's oh, that's how she showed her love for everybody. And I'm doing that now too. I'm trying to do both, right?
Yeah.
Be present where my feet are at. But, those details matter, and it just makes you feel so loved and, warmed.
Yeah, well, that's a great trait to have.
Yeah.
And a great trait to be raised by. What about your father when you think about your father?
Yeah, it's strange. So when you lose a parent and then, kind of roles change a little bit. And because my mom did so much for my sweet dad, it's been interesting. And, growing up or in college, I would call and my dad would pick up and we'd talk for maybe a minute or two. You good? Yeah, I'm good. Do you need anything? Nope. Okay, I'll get your mom on the phone. That's just how it was.
Right,
I knew my dad
absolutely.
was always there,
Yeah.
but again, he was the provider. He was like, whatever you need, I'm going to do. And now, without my mom here, it's allowed us to have a different kind of relationship where we obviously talk on the phone multiple times a week. But, looking back, I just realized his sacrifice, I was sometimes it's oh, Dad wasn't around. He traveled a lot for work and all of that, but that he was doing that for us. And I was never angry or anything with that, but it was just that was his sacrifice, always making sure we had whatever we needed. And there was always a thing about life lessons, we didn't have a automatic garage door opener because he always said the 3 girls, that's my garage door opener. You know what I mean? We didn't need that because that's what we had, And in the same light, this is embarrassing to say, but before I went to college, I had never set an alarm. I had never washed my sheets. because that's what my mom did, my dad provided, and so we always joke now. It's like, how did I become a responsible adult like that? Because that's how they loved on their kids, But yeah, my dad now, it's really interesting to see. He's talking more and more. He served in the Vietnam War, and he never talked about that growing up.
Oh, so he's talking about it now.
Yeah. So
how have you broken through?
Well, again, just some through, again, just different hardships. There's some blessings that come out of that. And so dealing with my mom's passing, that happened very quickly. And then I was sick as well. It was just really hard on him. And so through counseling and all of that has kind of spurred up some things, which sounds really terrible. And of course we would change some things in a heartbeat. But what some things have come out of it is stories and just things that I never knew about him.
He's opened up.
Yes.
Yeah, he's opened up.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of those childhood memories, small town.
Small town.
That means you had a unique upbringing, probably from a lot of your peers now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had cows growing up that they weren't dairy cows, they were Angus, that we butchered like in our pasture. And as I say it, like that doesn't seem odd to me, but not that it comes up often in conversation, but when it does, people are like, wait, what? I was like, that's just what we did, Mm-hmm. I showed cattle through the 4-H. Like, people are like, what? Who does that? So yeah, but you get to know your neighbors, and I think that's taught me some lessons of just being so kind to one another. We don't know everybody's story, but a small town just has, we didn't have, we would drive down Main Street back and forth, like we'd call it, or we're just going to go cruising.
And so you just go up and down
Staunton Main Street, which had like 4 or 5 stores. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but we thought it was so cool at the time.
So what were you seeing when you were driving up and down?
The same people going back and forth, and we would just wave at them. And then maybe, if it was crazy, we'd go to the Dollar General parking lot and like talk for a little bit. And it'd be crazy if somebody like had a beer. I mean, it was just, but that was all we knew. I mean, It was just like, that was it, I know, it sounds so crazy, but it was what we knew. Friday night, everybody went to the football game.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Friday Night Lights, but like in a teeny tiny like cornfield,
My goodness.
Yeah. I mean, my graduating class had 82 kids in it. I knew everybody. I knew everybody's parents. It was that's good and bad.
Sure.
But
so it cuts both ways,
right,
doesn't it? You can't get away with anything in that spot.
Right, for sure.
So when did you become aware, or were you aware while you were in Staunton, that this is unique? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So my undergrad is McKendree College.
Yes.
So I went a little away, but not much. And that's a really small school, too, a liberal arts school. Not a ton of diversity either. Right. But my sophomore year in college, I interned at Walt Disney World. And I was shocked, to say the least. I was living with 2,700 college students from all over the world, literally, and I never knew a lot of things. It was so good for me to really grow like as a person, and I got to shadow their whole marketing department. It was a great experience. I took an entire semester off and just was down there and learned a lot.
So when you say learned a lot, what are some of the things that you go, yeah, I learned that. I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, we're going to share this with my children, so I'm gonna limit exactly what I said.
All right, well, that answers the question.
Yeah, right. But just different perspectives of like, people were like, you grew up in the country, like you had cows, and it was like they only knew city life. And I'm still with friends with some people that I intern with, and to be able to just see how they grew up, it just really opened my eyes to just different perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, when you only know what you know.
Sure. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I think plenty of people in like the St. Louis area have maybe been to Chicago, but they might have not been to New York.
Right.
Right. And you see New York, it's a whole different skyline than St. Louis is, and you go, oh, I didn't even realize that
this
existed.
was even out here.
Right.
Or the opportunities. And I wouldn't change my childhood, or I had a great college experience. But looking back, and kind of what I hope for my boys is that they learn a little earlier just the opportunities that are out there. Again, I wouldn't change. I mean, I really truly believe everything happens for a reason. And as cliche as that sounds, this is the path that I was supposed to be on. But I do wish I would have just knew about the world. I mean, that sounds so silly and naive, but I was.
Yeah.
I mean, even graduating college at 21, I was so naive. I think Kurt even says that sometimes now, especially listening to your show. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. And he's like, I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't even know where to start.
Well, we are an educational program.
Right,
so it just comes with a sophisticated audience. What are some of the things when you think of your high school years outside of driving back and forth on Main Street and your college years that did you go, yeah, that was a great time, or that was an incredible learning experience?
Yeah. So when you go to a really small school, you can like be involved in like a million things. And so that was me. I was a drum major in the band, which
really?
sounds, Kurt always gives me a hard time on that. I was a soccer captain. I was a senior class president.
Really?
I was all the things, which sounds great, like, wow, but it's this tiny little school, you know.
You still had to beat out 81 people.
I guess so. True. And then because I went to such a small college, I was able to play soccer there.
Nice.
And just the level of discipline that I think you need in playing a sport. Our boys are really involved in hockey. You know, Madison hockey is a really big deal.
Yeah.
And, but we both feel like I just know that I learned so much playing sports, and even though it was a tiny little college, just the discipline that is needed to play even at that level. Just, I think, set me up for success, and I think that's why we focus that on our boys now too. Obviously, we want them to have a great time, but just some life skills, you know, being involved in so many things, I think has helped me be who I am today.
This is my own self-interest, I think, because I got cut from everything, so I never got to play anything. But since you made the team and actually played in college, what are some of these life skills?
Kurt always gives me, it was like this small, tiny little
we
college.
Gotta count it.
Yeah, I mean, it helped pay for school. So,
yeah, exactly.
Right,
it counts.
Right, yeah.
So what were some of the things that you learned as far as discipline that you now see, okay, your boys are involved in hockey?
Yeah.
That's here in St. Louis, I don't know what the situation is in Madison, but there aren't a lot of rinks, so you're up super early or super late.
And we're on that ice. Their 8-year-olds are on the ice 3 times a week for practice, and then
that?
Games. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and amazing, but ridiculous. Yeah, I think just the discipline of like 2-a-day practices and trying to balance schoolwork and that, and having a really great time. And soccer players have some stereotypes for a reason, because most of them are true. And so I just grew a lot of like
to read between the lines there, and I can't figure out where we're going.
But just the discipline of like setting goals. I think was my coach in college was all about setting your individual goals and our team goals, and then what do we do actually to get that? Not just setting these lofty goals, but like taking actual steps and actions to get to those goals. And I never really had done that. I just went out there and played, and that was it, but it really kind of taught me to think bigger.
Yeah, now that you look back on it, you go, okay, I didn't realize it, but I was learning quite a bit in this moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you go to McKendree, and from McKendree, where do you go?
Yeah, so I graduated with a degree in marketing and a minor in Spanish, and I started working at the Magic House in their marketing department. Yeah.
That's outstanding.
So, it was great. Always loved going to the Magic House growing up, and it was just a really great opportunity.
How were you going to the Magic House growing up? Were you taking the
well, I lived in Southern Illinois, so we would
it's
jaunt
like
over
a mile
to Kirkwood.
Drive, and I'm like, traffic on Lindbergh.
Well,
when
you live in the country, and literally the closest like Walmart was 45 minutes away.
Oh my!
I mean, that was
so
nothing.
You didn't think anything of it?
No,
So how long
of
the drive was the Magic House?
Probably an hour and a half.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, but again, there was nothing else there.
So you must have really loved the Magic House.
Right. But it was a really great opportunity, really great to have right out of college. And worked there for a couple years and did more like event coordination for them, and loved it, but just felt like there was more that I needed to do. And so decided to quit my full-time job and go back to school and to get my secondary business education. So did that for like a year and a half to get my teaching degree, and then taught at O'Fallon Township High School for about 10 years.
How about that?
Yeah. So in their business department, webpage design, finance, marketing.
Legitimate lessons that people can pragmatically apply to life.
Yes, so especially like personal finance. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that's, I'll still get, and it's been several years since I've taught, I will still get like a Facebook message of like, hey, that was actually at the time they hated it,
Sure.
but it was like reconciliation and how a credit card works and how you're going to buy your first house and those things. At the time, nobody cared,
valuable.
but people, like literally, I will still get a message that said that was the best class.
It's
And
gotta
because
make
I
you
had
feel
some business knowledge and had that little bit of a background too, I think that was helpful.
What did you like about teaching? What didn't you like?
Well, I was like 22.
Yeah.
And I was teaching seniors. So some of them were like 17 and 18. So that was just like a weird situation sometimes. It was like, I'm not that much older than you are. But, I never had really any issues in the classroom because I just showed them respect. I mean, I had high expectations, and obviously we had rules in our classroom, but like I respected them as human beings and really just wanted the best for them. And then I got that respect back. And I know teaching is so different now, and the classroom is so different, but I still think some of those core values of just treating
mutual respect.
I think everyone's always like, oh, kids these days. I think we've always said that.
Sure.
Whatever generation is kids, oh my gosh, and we all turn out okay.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be okay.
At what point did you meet Kurt? And how?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So I was teaching. All my friends were married, and I was like, where we're not like clubbing. Like where am I going to go? And so at the time, like nobody was doing it, but I got on Match.com, and I told no one.
Now, people now wouldn't think anything of that.
Right.
But at the time, that
So
was probably
taboo.
groundbreaking. Taboo. Perfect.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so I told like 2 girlfriends just to make sure that if I went out on a date, like if I didn't show back up, that.
Here's his information.
Yes. And he was my only date. So I always say it's the best $24.95 I ever spent. I only spent 1 month.
It's great return on investment.
Right. He had a couple more dates before me. But yeah, I just didn't. Again, it was kind of like, I want somebody. It wasn't even like I was searching for a husband. I was just searching for like a companion. And where was I going? It was a goal that I had, as odd as that sounded. But what was I going to do if I couldn't just sit around? I wasn't going to find anybody that way. And so, I created a profile, but I did not add any pictures. Because again, at the time,
to me, that would be a red flag.
Right. So, but I was teaching high school. I was so worried that some of my kids were going to find it, and that would be a whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so, at the end of this whole profile that I wrote up, I was like, send me a wave if you want my glamour shots. Just like a play on that. And so that was the first thing he said. Yeah, like send pictures, which I don't hate him for. I wouldn't have even. What was it called? Winked at you? I think that was a wink at the time. A wink at him if I didn't see pictures. So I sent pictures, and then we just started talking. And I just said, well, if we can't just keep talking. Like, let's go out on a date. And looking back, like I went to his house. What was I thinking?
Very bold.
Very bold. Of course, my 2 girlfriends knew. I was like, every time we stopped somewhere, I'm like, this is where we're at. If you don't hear from me in like 30 minutes, this is my location. And we went, he was living in St. Charles at the time. And so we went down on the streets of St. Charles and had dinner down there. And he just happened to, when the bill arrived, had to go to the bathroom.
Oh,
so that was so convenient. And so I just paid the bill. I didn't even think twice about it. Like I was working, I pay the bill, and he said that's kind of the first thing that really like sold me to him, is that like, oh, like she's willing to like pay the bill for our first date.
Kurt, was that a test?
Yeah.
Was that a choreographed test?
And I had gotten frustrated. Like I've been on a few dates, and it's like within like 5 or 10 minutes, if this is going.
Sure.
And then at the end of the meal, it's like, I'll do dessert to go, and then it's like, here's my card, just pay for it. So after a while, it's like, man, you just get invested in it. And then it would just like randomly happen. It was like, I was like taken back. Like, wow, she just didn't even ask, didn't even have to split. It's like, hey, let's go. Where's the next spot? We're having a good time.
Well, then I think you asked me what was wrong with me.
Yeah, I did. I said,
I was like, obviously right. Nothing. Like, So and so we and I was 27 at the time, which I think I needed to be 27. These people that get married at 22, I think works well for them. It wouldn't have worked well for me. And I know it wouldn't have worked well for Kurt.
Yeah.
Like we both needed to be more mature.
A little more mature.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, helped our marriage for sure, is that we both had our
Right.
own money, we both had our own homes, we were responsible working people and had our own identities before we met each other.
What do you like about Kurt?
His yeah. I love our banter back and forth. I think some people are taken back by it, that we give each other such a hard time, but that's really how we show that, like, that's how you know Kurt likes you, is that if he gives you a hard time. And now just looking at how he is with our boys, through this journey, I hate using that word, but through this journey, I've had to come to terms with me not being around for years and years. And God has totally shown me that he is going to be he's the best dad for our boys and will do anything and everything for them. And so that's obviously number one, is that he, is going to do just the very best job. And I know that, like, I have such a peace about that. But yeah, his humor, and just as much as he never wants the limelight, unlike me, I'm okay being in the limelight. He's always kind of behind the scenes. I think that works for us. If we both wanted to be in the limelight, it wouldn't be great. But he is always there, and as such a strong, like, foundation. And when you have a terminal illness, and he is shouldering, working. I was able to stop working because of some of the side effects of the drugs, and just he wants me to live my best life and be there and do all the things. And he's shouldering his job, obviously caring for me when I need it, doing all the things for the boys, coaching the boys hockey, and he takes it with such stride. And I can tell how proud he is, as he should be. He should be so proud of the life that he's created for our family. It's unlike anything. And there's a lot of people that would say that he's too humble to acknowledge how much he does for our family. And just sometimes I'm like, a little bit more empathy when I'm not feeling well. That's not his strong suit, but he loves me in such a way that it's really hard to explain, but that I know at the end of the day, he's going to do everything. And this guy is loyal to a fault.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, what a great thing to hear.
Yeah.
17 years you guys have been together? Probably
Yeah,
17 years since the first date, if I'm doing my math correctly.
Yeah, we had a little break. Kurt really wasn't sure for a little bit there.
Yeah, I was about to say, it was so lovely, and then all of a sudden the shrapnel.
But then
we'll use the shears.
But then he saw the light. He saw the light, and he couldn't stay away. So, we were married in 2010 and had the best wedding ever.
What happened at the wedding?
Yeah,
what was going on?
Again, because we were like 30 and we had a little bit more money in our pockets and all of that, we could do exactly what we really wanted to do. We were able to bus everybody in, so nobody had to drive. And, just really.
So where was the wedding?
So we got married in Edwardsville, in the church that my parents were married 40 years earlier.
How about that?
Yeah, and then our reception was in Edwardsville as well. And at the time, he was working for Red Bull on premise, and so he worked with a lot of bars in the area. So we were able to do like fun, just like signature cocktails for us, for our guests, and it was just really detailed to exactly what we like, and to have all of the people surrounding us. We are so lucky. We have an amazing village still here in St. Louis, even though we haven't lived here in 10 years. Yeah. Our village here is great, and the people we met in Dallas, and now that we have in Madison, we work for those relationships. We pour into people, and now that we need a little extra help here and there, if I'm not feeling good, or our village shows up in ways that you can't even imagine, and we're so grateful to them.
Tell me about becoming a mom.
Yeah, so that was a hard journey. We went to a ton of doctors here in St. Louis, and they pretty much said that I wasn't a candidate. I have severe endometriosis, and so they were kind of like, we don't think you're a candidate for IVF. So we were thinking about adopting, and we moved to Dallas. Kurt got a great opportunity, and we were like, let's do it. Let's, we don't have to worry about kids or anything.
Sure.
Like, let's go. And, we were like, this will either make us or break us. When you move to a new city and literally know no one, and you just have to spend time together all the time. It was great. And we met some amazing fertility doctors down there, did one round of IVF that didn't work. Yeah. And then did some other procedures. And we tried it one more time. Our fertility specialist said, if you were my sister, I would tell you to try it one more time. And we did. And we have 2 beautiful boys that it was really hard carrying them. I was in and out of the hospital the entire time, but totally worth it. They were born, and Ben spent a few days in the NICU, but that was it. So it was a hard journey, and but obviously completely worth it. And having twins, I mean, rocked and wrecked our world all at the same time. We didn't know any different.
Sure.
But I remember those 3 a.m. feedings because they were very little.
Yeah.
3 a.m. feedings, and we're both up, and I'm like, who complains about one baby? Who? And people at Kurt's work would say, well, why don't you just get a night nanny? So in Dallas, it's very popular to have night nannies.
Sure.
We were like, we would love to. Like, we can't afford it. Like, yes,
Yeah.
that would be amazing,
Yeah.
but we can't have a night nanny.
Yeah.
But we survived it, and now they're 8, and it just keeps getting easier and easier. And I just absolutely love this stage. They're like
at the 8-year-old stage.
Yes, we're out of just taking 2 little children anywhere was always a feat.
Sure.
But we always did it. We always went out and and they couldn't be any more different. Which is amazing.
How are they different? Give me the names of your
Benjamin. He is quiet and the kindest kid you will ever meet. Has just a heart of gold. Shy, but a really good athlete, which you wouldn't, and pretty aggressive, which does not meet his personality. Yeah. And people on the outwards think that maybe that him and I are very similar, but it's not. Ben is more like Kurt, just kind of a little bit more behind the scenes. And then you have Braxton. He's got to look the part. I mean, we want all the things. When he comes out on the ice, he always hits his chest and does a peace sign up to the God.
Nice.
Who is that? He's hardly in the play. Like, we're paying thousands of dollars for him to play hockey, and he's hardly in the play because he wants to hit the stick to wave at his fans. He's all about getting the attention. He's hilarious. Not a great athlete, although he wants it so bad. He wants it so bad, but he cares more about what he looks like and making everybody laugh. He's so witty. He's either going to rule the world or take it down. I mean, it's going to be
Delta guy.
one or the other, but they couldn't be more different. But that's what we love about them, and they're their own little people. And it's been such a joy and an honor to be their mom and to just watch them. We have pretty hard expectations for them. We have we're pretty strict, but we're seeing the benefits of that now. Of we do the right thing always because it's the right thing. It's not always the popular thing, and we're going to be kind. We don't have to be friends with everybody, right? But we can be kind to everybody. And so, just kind of, we feel a huge sense of responsibility to not create assholes, honestly. I mean, that's what, right? I think that's our goal is we don't want you to become assholes.
Absolutely. So. That's a great life lesson also.
Yeah, right.
They were born in Dallas,
They were born in Dallas.
How quickly did you move to Madison? How long were they in Dallas?
About 3 years later.
Okay.
So
Kurt got they were still so young it didn't really matter as far as moving.
Nope, not at all. And Kurt got an opportunity with this job, and again, we were like, great. We like change, and it also then allowed us to be a little bit closer to our family, which are still kind of in the St. Louis area. So moved up to Madison and knew no one again, and just put in the work. You have to. It's people are always kind, but it's one thing to then have them invite you into their bubble, right? Like, of course, people are going to be nice to you, but then to also get the invite. So very early on, we found a church that we loved, and through Kurt's work and everything. I mean, we were inviting people over. We were in it, and we're reaping the benefits of that now. You have to put work into relationships, even as adults.
Yeah. And get to know.
And we
people
love it up there,
welcome.
minus the snow. I mean, it snows from October to April, and it is no joke. But we do. We really love it up there, and the people are amazing. And Kurt's job is great, and I started working for the church as a communications director for a couple years until I got sick, and that's just been such a joy. And our faith, I think, has grown exponentially being at that church. They meet you where you're at. It's like, whoever you are, we love you, and we want you just to come and learn about Jesus. And it's been really good for our boys, too.
Were you very religious growing up?
So we always went to church, always. Every Sunday, I went to a very small, tiny, country bumpkin church. Kurt grew up Catholic. I mean, Catholic private school, CBC, all boys school.
Sure. No, I can relate.
But would I say I was religious? No.
Yeah.
But we did it because that's just what you do, right? And I think when we went to Dallas, so he grew up Catholic, I grew up Presbyterian, and we were trying to figure out how that works together as a marriage and as a family. And so in Dallas, we found this mega church that we ended up loving, kind of very contemporary style worship and life lessons, like applicable life lessons, a church called Lake Point, and just really loved that. And kind of grew a lot that way. But I think Heartland has just provided opportunities, and because I worked there are a lot of my close friends. And when you walk through something like a terminal illness, Kurt had also, some right after my diagnosis had Bell's palsy, probably from the stress of mine. And so to have these people walk with you, also loving the Lord and understanding that like good things happen, bad things happen all the time, and it's not necessarily, he's not punishing us, but just walking through that and processing and it's okay to be mad and it's okay to be sad, but we can also be still joyful and positive in this life.
Yeah, your perspective is incredible.
Well, thank you.
It's a
But,
thing.
what other choice do I have? I
Right.
mean, I guess the other choice would be just to sit and wallow in it. And let me tell you, there's days that I do that. I think if you don't do that, you're not truly processing everything. But I know there's a tomorrow, and I know that even though I can be mad and sad and angry and truly disappointed when I can't go with my boys, or I can't, yesterday at the City Museum, they wanted me to crawl this thing, and I just said, my bones, I just can't do it. And there was this little kid there, and he said, oh, you should go with them. And Braxton said, no, my mom's got metastatic breast cancer, and she'd love to do it, but she can't do it today. Their increase of empathy through this has been such a blessing too. But it's okay to be mad and sad and angry, and it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. It can be an and I'm grateful for this life, and I have this amazing husband, and I have these 2 boys, and I have this village. Like, the alternative perspective does no good for anyone.
I know you don't like the term journey.
Yeah, it just feels so cliche.
But
I think,
But we know what we're talking about. So
Yes.
If you could take me through what has been this journey, how did it start? It started 7 years ago as we sit here?
Yeah, about 7 years ago. My boys were like 13 months old, and so we were out of our minds because we were just like survival mode. And I was really tired, but I had 13-month-old twins and no family in the area. I mean, we had friends, but, it wasn't like grandma could come over and help. I mean, it was just Kurt and I had an annual exam with my gynecologist, and I was going to cancel because I was so tired, and something in the back of my head said, you don't cancel these appointments. And that appointment saved my life. I mean, he found a small lump, and we didn't think it would be anything, and come to find out, it was breast cancer. And then our world was turned upside down, and then I did a PET scan, and they found the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I have no family history of any type of cancer. I mean, later my mom then passed away of lung cancer, but at the time there was no history. I pumped my body full of lots of hormones to get those babies. And so my cancer is, it feeds off of hormones. I wouldn't change it for the world. So I say all of that. I would not change it. And so had a double mastectomy. Thankfully, I did that because they found another tumor of a different type of breast cancer in my body, which was crazy. Like my blood work came back normal. So it was crazy. So I immediately started chemotherapy, and I did a year of chemotherapy of hair loss. I mean, I was in bed for 10 to 12 days after each round.
And so what year was this, 2017-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
And that took about a year.
So if I'm not mistaken, if I'm following this correctly, you had essentially 3 cancers at once in your body?
Yes.
The breast cancer, the second breast cancer, and the non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, and my blood work came back normal.
Oh,
so
my
if
goodness.
Dr.
Did you have
Richards,
symptoms?
I was tired.
That's it.
That was it.
There was no...
Nothing. So literally Dr. Richards saved my life.
If you don't go to that appointment, you're...
Done.
Because you had no symptoms, yeah.
0 symptoms, yeah.
Oh, my.
So that was a really hard year, obviously, and my parents had to move in because, Kurt still had to work, and I couldn't get out of bed a lot of the days. And so, and then about a few months into that, my mom started not feeling well, had 0 symptoms, and we lost her 3 weeks later of lung cancer. It was insane. It's like a lifetime story. It's like a lifetime movie. Yeah, it's crazy.
So how did that... She
started
no symptoms.
No symptoms. She started having pain in her right side, and we just thought she'd been playing with the boys and probably ran into like our kitchen island. And I was able, again, by the grace of God, I reached out to my moms of multiples and said, hey, I need somebody to see my mom immediately. And they're like, oh, I work for an internal specialist. Have her come in. I'll get her a CT scan today. And it was literally everywhere. She had 0 symptoms. So we got her back home. And then, crazy enough, it's important for me to stay on my chemo schedule. And so she was like, do not come up to get another round of chemo in. And then when we knew that it was going to be the end, they pumped me with everything so I could get up and see her one last time, and was able to write her eulogy, which I'm not a writer, but feel very honored to be able to talk about her life. And it was difficult and hard, but also super grateful that we had those months with her. Yeah. Super grateful.
So you're dealing with your treatment.
Yeah.
You lose your mom. And then at some point, am I correct, you are given a clean bill of health?
Yeah,
Is that
clean bill of
accurate?
health.
So when does that
beat
happen?
it. That was in February
Of
18.
Of 18,
Yep.
okay.
And it was a clean bill of health. And
So how do you feel at that time? Are you starting to notice you feel better, like you weren't as lethargic?
I mean, it takes a while. You when you come out of that chemo fog, it's difficult. And I was growing back my hair, and I still had these little kids. It was, we talk about pre-cancer and post-cancer because your marriage is also quite a bit different, right? When you go through something like that, your family dynamics change. I mean, everything changes. And so now I'm post-cancer, but I'm not the same person that I was pre-cancer. And for a year, we had to live by my doctor's appointments and my chemo appointments and how was I feeling and all of these things. And then it's over with. And then you're like, well, now what?
Right.
So we had to do some work. And again, I think that's a testament of Kurt, of who he is, and just our devotion to each other, that this was not going to break us. And if anything, I think it maybe made us stronger.
Yeah.
And then he had this opportunity to move to Madison kind of a year or two after that. And so moved to Madison, and we love change. And so we kind of just dove into that. The kids started preschool, and then I just started having some severe pain on my right side. And I held off as much as possible because I was worried that it was going to be something. And finally I was at work one day. I was trying to record some taping things, and my boss looks at me and she's like, you got to go to the ER. And so I went by myself because I was like, nobody needs to sit here with me all day. Kurt for sure doesn't. When Kurt gets nervous, he gets real chatty and tries to be funny, and I get real annoyed. So we know that dynamic. So I'm like, I'll call you when I'm done. And then after my scans, then the doctor came in and looked at me, and I was like, oh.
So you could tell before he opened up his mouth?
Yes, yeah. And he said, the cancer's back. We don't know what type of cancer it is. So then it started all the appointments of, what is it? We thought it was the lymphoma, which, not that we wanted that, but that is better than the breast cancer coming back. So I started with my lymphoma oncologist, and we were starting to do that. And then I got a biopsy done through my hip, and it came back as breast cancer. And I think at that point, I knew what that meant, that if the breast cancer has moved to another part of your body, it's incurable. I don't think Kurt really understood at that time. And looking back, I should have communicated that a little bit better to him. So we had to wait a whole weekend to kind of hear the actual results, but I knew what that meant. And then, we went in on a Tuesday, and they told us that, it was a lot of places, and they couldn't believe that I didn't really have any symptoms besides that pain. And they gave me a pretty short timeline and said that this is the best that I'm going to feel, and we're going to do all that we can. And so we just jumped right into it, taking oral chemo, and it's grown a couple times since then, but really doing well. I take oral chemo, and some days are good, some days are bad, but we focus on the good days. And it, like I said, since then, I've been able to share my story a lot of just perseverance and choosing joy, even though you can also choose joy and be mad. I think people are always so quick to go, nope, I got to pull up my bootstraps and I got to be okay with this. I think it's okay to sit for a moment and be mad and sad and just know that tomorrow's a better day.
Did you have this perspective that you have now in the days of the diagnosis?
I think I did.
Did you really?
I think I did. When we FaceTimed all of our family to tell them, I'm not much of a crier, and I'm more task driven. Okay, so what's the task? What are we going to do to make the best of this? Kurt was a mess, and he kept apologizing. I'll never forget it. Kurt was like, I'm so sorry, I'm crying. I'm so sorry, I'm crying. I'm like, well, it'd be real weird if you were like, You know, I'm like,
Right.
I'm glad. Like, I hate that you're upset, but like, it would be real awkward if you were just like, it'll be fine, you know. But you know, telling our families and our friends was draining, and what I've found too is people get very uncomfortable by your own discomfort. So what kind of ends up happening is, even though you're telling them bad news about yourself, you find yourself comforting them, you
Yeah.
know, because they're at the end of the day, there's no words. And sometimes I say that you don't have to say anything because there isn't anything to say. And I think that just allows them some freedom of that. But yeah, I think I'm a positive person anyway. Again, I want to, and I want my boys to know this too. And when they, you know, we've talked a lot about obviously this diagnosis with them. But what I really want them to know is that, you know, that I've always chosen the positive route. That why wouldn't you? I've lost my train of thought now. Where was I going with that?
Well, your mindset, and I asked about you know what your mindset was in the days of getting the
Oh yeah,
diagnosis.
thank you. And I'll tell my boys, you know, if I can't go and do something, if Kurt's going to take them because I'm too tired to go, you know, sometimes I'd get a little frustrated because they would be disappointed, and then I was like, what if I told them that I'm also disappointed? And so I've changed that narrative to say, gosh, I wish I could go. Like,
Yeah.
it makes me so sad. And it has really changed them, too, to understand, like, oh, Mom would rather be with me.
Right.
So I want them to know that even though it really, you know, overall, I think they would say, too, that Mom's doing really great. They've seen hard times, and I think that's okay a little bit. You know, obviously we've sheltered them and we want to protect them, but we also want them completely involved in this process, and know that some days are hard, and they're going to have hard days too.
Sure. How old were Ben and Braxton when you got the diagnosis?
6.
6.
Yeah.
And how did you handle that?
Yeah, so again, I'm task driven, so I immediately looked out for organizations and started talking with counselors about how do we talk to them about this? How do we make them understand? We want it to be very open. And a counselor was very pivotal in going, when you tell them, you know, don't give them a timeline, but tell them that, you know, this is going to be shorter than what we had thought. Like, I probably won't be a grandma to their kids and all of those things. And she's like, you have to be okay with them going, okay, and then like going and playing with something else. And I'm like, I'm so glad she did that. They weren't that quick to like move on, but for a child to understand and process that, that's going to take a while. And I was so grateful that she had told me that, because I would have been heartbroken
Sure.
if it's like, do you not understand what I'm telling you? You know, but we have open conversations. I have this thing on my refrigerator, and it was a card that somebody gave me, and it just says "Cancer sucks." And I had a friend come over and say, you know, we're going to think more positively. We want you to think that you're going to, you know, beat this and all of that. And I'm like, well, I want to be realistic. I want to be responsible. And I also have to protect my children, and that we can be positive. We're going to fight this. And they know that these cancer cells are so hard and that my body is fighting them. But at some point, the cancer cells are just going to be too strong. But you know, Ben will say, more so than Braxton, kind of when I put him to bed, he'll say sometimes like, you know, I wish the cancer was gone. I wish you didn't have that. I do too, buddy, you know, or oh, yeah. And then there was, so a friend put a note on this Cancer Sucks that says, free of cancer, because she just wants me to always think positively, which is great. And her intent is so good. And I do think positively. And I was out of town on a girls' trip, and we FaceTimed, and Ben had seen the note, and he said, "You're free of cancer, Mom. I saw the note." And I just had to break it to him, and you know, his little chin wavered. And in that moment, I was so sad for him, but also like that he understands what's going on. And I think that's going to serve them well. I hope, that's my prayer, is that will serve them well when this gets heavy, you know, because right now, they're living their best lives. Mom is home. I can pick them up from school. We do homework together. I get to do all the school trips. I get to do all the things where before I worked, you know, and so, you know, it's just different now. So I mean, we're, like I said, I'm living a great life right now.
So you guys have consciously said, excuse me, that you are going to live as much as you possibly can.
Yes.
And so how are you doing that?
Well, immediately we took a trip to New York City at Christmas time in December. I want to do all the trips, all the traveling, all the time. and Kurt's always reminding me, like, I still have to work, and I get that. But yeah, I'm like, we're saving, we're walking through that too of like, we've saved so well for retirement. I'm like, well, let's use some of that money. But we've done New York. We went to Maui for like 9 days,
Nice.
and the kids got to fly first class because of some of our friends.
Oh, wow.
And they lived their best lives. They kept asking the stewardess, "Is that free? Is that free? Is that free?" Yeah, we've done Maui. Gosh, where else we've done? Smoky Mountains, Rocky Mountains, Florida a bunch of times, Dominican Republic. Yeah, so you worry about, like, they've gotten to do so much in their 8 years, and we talk a lot that this is special because we're trying to make these memories, because we don't want them to become like, this is just what we do.
Sure.
This is very special circumstances. And I'll be honest, I treat every moment so much with more intention than I ever did before. Putting them to bed, I feel like my patience with them on a lot of things has grown. I'm just sitting with them more and just relishing in that. And because I'm so task driven, I think prior to this, I was more just like, okay, let's get this done, and now let's get this done,
Sure.
and I'm stopping and pausing more. And what a blessing that is.
One of the things you said that stood out to me right when I met you is that you are now living like you should have been living.
Yes.
Because of this. I think that's incredible perspective, certainly for your boys to hear, but for anybody who would hear this to hear. If you can, explain that.
Yeah, I think, we have been very blessed. I say that, but we've worked hard. Kurt and I have made responsible decisions, and we are, we put in the work, but we were always, on to the next thing. I want to work so we can do this. We want to save for this. We want to get the boys in this school. We want to, we always had goals, and we worked towards that, which isn't a bad thing. Like, we had a great life. I think what this disease has taught me is what to say yes to. Because when you say yes to things, then you're automatically saying no to other things. And because I get fatigued, and because I sometimes are so nauseous and can't do things, it has really made me set up some healthy boundaries. Because I'm going to say yes to all the things prior to this. Yes, and both Kurt and I are extroverts, and we want to go and do, and I want to experience, and I can't do that anymore. So it's made me go, what do I want to say yes to? And it's okay to say no to other things. Which is a hard lesson.
Sure.
When you don't have to choose, it's not a big deal. But now that I have to choose, it's making me stop and go, really, what's important? What do I want to show my boys is what is important? I think the biggest lesson is show up for people. Even if you don't have the right words, even if you can't fix it, even if it's this little thing of going to a little girl's swim meet, and we, show up for your people, it means more than you'll ever know. Just show up for your people. So I'm showing up way more than I ever did before.
Yeah. So with this, I don't know if I want to call it clarity. I don't know if that's the right way to view it. You think there is something to that?
I think, we have throughout this have had this calm and peace. There's a scripture that says, that it doesn't make sense, and so we do rely heavily on God and our faith to have this peace that shouldn't really be there. Cancer is always ringing in the back of my head. I say it's like a bee buzzing. It's on my mind every second of every day, and it's a good and a bad thing, right? But I try to focus on that. That means it's just in the forefront, so I'm making the best decisions for me and my family and making the most of every moment. But throughout this, I've been peaceful, I've been calm, and I always say, wait till it gets heavy. This all could change in an instant, and I pray that I can still handle it with grace and love and gratefulness.
I would think, though, no matter what, if it does change, I think people who would watch or listen to this would have a great admiration or inspiration for the manner with which you and your family have handled it.
Well, thank you, and I think that's what I believe that's why God is using this, is that as horrible as this is, and would I change it? I would change it in a heartbeat. But we're using it for good. I've had the opportunity to speak to different groups, and yeah, it does a lot for me to be able to share my story and to see other people kind of use it to help them in their lives. You know, it doesn't have to be this. You know, if I could say anything to Jesus, I'd be like, it didn't have to go this far. You know, it didn't have to go this far, but we are trying to use it for good.
Yeah. With regard to your boys, and now 8 years old, and the time you want to make sure you're spending with them.
Yeah.
What are now priorities that maybe weren't pre-diagnosis?
Yeah, I think we've always been about experiences over things, but I think that's even more important now. And I thought it was because I want them to experience it, but really it's more selfish than that. It's me that I wanna watch them experience
sure. Yeah,
it.
Makes sense.
But it's been such a joy to watch them grow into their own little people. You know, at 8 and 9, they can now, because they'll be 9 next month, you know, make a little bit more rational decisions. And we're watching them deal with friendships and, you know, sporting conflicts and all of that. And just me focusing more on relationships than I probably would have before. Not that we would have ever been like, oh, it doesn't matter, true people, however. But I think I'm spending more time with them and just focusing on you know, or if something happens to them, how does that make you feel? Because then don't do that to somebody else. So I think I'm just focusing more on relationships with them. And what a blessing it has for them to see people in our village like show up and love on us. And I hope that teaches them to always like, you know, we'll never be able to pay back what all these people have done for us. And that's not just through kind gifts and allowing us to go on trips and help with that, and but just showing up and loving us. I hope, because we can't ever pay that back, but my boys can pay that forward, and so I hope they're learning through that's how they can love on other people too. It might look different. It might not be money. It might be just stopping by, or it might just be, you know, little things, but we can always love on other people.
I usually finish the conversations with this question, but I'm really curious what your answer is, even though a lot of this has certainly been about perspective. And that question is, and usually it's somebody who's in their 70s, 80s, or 90s,
right.
But what do you know now about living a happy and successful life that you didn't know when you were 20? Oftentimes people are 50, 60, 70 years removed from that. You are not.
Yeah.
But do you have perspective on that you go, man, I wish I could have told that 20-year-old this?
I, you know, because I'm such a goal setter and task-oriented person, I was so worried, you know, even just at the Magic House, kind of like doing the best there and always working, and then, okay, nope, I'm going to go back to school, and then I'm going to do this, and then focusing on that. And I think I wish in my 20s I would have just been able to just stop a little bit more and take that time in. Again, you know, I said earlier that I think I'm a better person because I got married a little bit later in life, but my 20s were just more focused on like jobs and, you know, getting to where I want to be. And I wish I would have just kind of paused a little bit more and like relished in those 20s of like making money and just not really having a ton of responsibilities and prioritizing some other things over a job.
That's good counsel right there.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you know,
counsel.
looking back, I mean, it wasn't, I mean, I did great in my 20s, but looking back, I'm like, yeah, you know, I could have done that a little better. I could have had a little bit more fun.
Let me ask you about your favorite family traditions, because you have a list of them here.
I mean, it's
What do we got?
It never stops. I mean, I have an advent calendar at Christmas. So my mom was huge in tradition. So, you know, just carrying on her legacy is such a honor for me, and I hope to do that. You know, when you have boys, though, I'm like, I hope your partner, wife, whoever that ends up being, like, will do this. But you know, we have 2 advent calendars, one from my childhood and one that we bought when the boys were born, and we use that every year, and then they'll use those advent calendars with their families. You know, we you know, lovingly do the Elf on the Shelf, and it always ends at the manger scene because we always want to remember that. We have a Easter tree that we put up because it's so important to understand, you know, that this is a big deal that Christ is risen, and you know, seeing the Christmas lights, doing the gingerbread things, like we really love that, and we are very intentional about doing that. And not only just our family, but bringing other people in and saying, these are the traditions that we have in our family. Hiding a pickle on the Christmas tree and finding that for an extra prize, you know, just all those things. And even little things that we do every year for every holiday, we try to pull other people in and say, this is how we love our, this is the family traditions, and we want you to do that as well.
This question also, I've never asked it of anybody younger than me, but here we are. How do you feel the world has changed in your lifetime, and what has changed for the better and what has changed for the worse? This is good, because as peers here, age-wise, we can both reflect on
I know,
it. What's your
that
answer?
was hard. It was a hard question. Obviously, I'm going to think of cell phones and technology. I think they do so good, and we often talk about when our boys are going to get their cell phones, and then do we have access to social media? And
what are you thinking on that? I'm curious where you are on that.
I know. Well, again, we want to hold out for as long as possible.
Is there a standard age?
Well, I mean, there's kids in their class that have cell phones
At
already. 8? Oh, yeah. And
wow.
It's way too soon. I'm more worried about Braxton than Benjamin, especially with social media.
Oh, my goodness.
But, you just want to protect them, but it's hard, right? Because you want to protect them and put them in a bubble, but you also don't want to make them so naive that they don't know the world around them. And so, I think technology can be used for in such wonderful ways, but also I think sometimes we rely too heavily on that.
Mm-hmm.
We sit down to dinner as a family, and the TV isn't on. We limit screen time quite a bit. And that works for our family. This is a no judgment zone, so whatever works for your family is great. What works for our family is really hardly any TV. We limit the Nintendo Switch. We limit all of that because I want my boys to be able to look at people in their eyes and have a conversation with them and shake people's hands. And, I think we're missing that. I think at the end of the day, as I said earlier, like, our kids are going to be fine. Everybody's always worried about the next generation. They're going to be fine. But I think we do need to be more intentional about creating personal connections.
Absolutely.
Kurt and I fall into it. We'll just be on our phones. It's like 20 minutes later, I look up and I'm like, oh, we're sitting here together, but we haven't even talked, Can be a good thing. Some nights it's an okay thing. But I really want my boys to be able to have relationships and to be able to talk to people and find value in that than trying to post something that tries to show their life in a way that's really not real.
Yeah. Boy, that's really good counsel.
Yeah,
there. That's really good
now,
counsel.
I mean, don't mind me. I'll still post something and put a filter on it. I'm not, but I think that's really important.
This is inspiring, to say the very least.
Thank you.
I know you're doing this in particular for your sons.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to make sure that you
I figured you would
for them?
end with this, and I have been just really praying about it and just trying to figure out, you want to say the right things, and you want to leave a legacy. Feels like so much pressure and such a sense of responsibility. I know I'll always be a part of their lives, and I'm not worried that they will forget about me, and I know Kurt will always make sure that doesn't happen. But I just hope they look back and I know how much it has been an honor to be their mom and to grow with them, and I've learned so much from them, and I hope they've learned so much from me about grace and mercy and gratitude, and also just a ton of fun. Kurt gets to be the fun dad a lot, which is fine. He is a lot more fun than I am. But I hope in these last few months I have played more, I have done more, and I hope that they feel that. Maybe not in this moment, but when they look back in, hopefully a long time, but when they look back, that they have just the best memories and just the overall just a feeling of just like so much love from me.
I have no doubt that they will. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your story.
This has been such a gift. What a great gift from Kurt, and just being intentional about doing this is I'm honored to do it and feel so grateful to have this opportunity.
Thank you for your grace, inspiring, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you.